Hey, hey, hey. Happy Thursday. Come on in. Pull up a chair. Gaming Gang Dispatch is in the air. Howdy, gang, and welcome once again to the Duct Tape Studios. I'm Jeff McAleer, your host here at the Gaming Gang Dispatch, brought to you by, interestingly enough, GamingGang.com, of which I happen to be the founder and editor-in-chief. So welcome aboard, everybody. Tonight is Thursday, March 13th, 2025. This is live stream number 1165. If you're not overly familiar with the show, let me point out, super casual around here. Just hang out talking about the latest in tabletop gaming news, and then I will sometimes pontificate about a topic related to our hobby. Sometimes we will take a first look at a game. And then every once in a while, I continue my ongoing series, Let's Build a Fantasy Role-Playing Game, which is what we're doing tonight. And we are going to talk about monsters. Ooh, scary kids, scary. Of course, when you're not watching videos on the Gaming Gang channel, be sure to visit GamingGang.com for all latest in tabletop gaming news, reviews, and a whole lot more you are not going to find here on YouTube. You know the drill. Get your geek on at thegaminggang.com. Then, of course, because this is a live show, there is also chat available. It's not on screen. It's one of the ways I keep some of the more unusual commenters at bay. And you must be a subscriber to the channel for at least 10 whole minutes before you can take part in chat. Yet another way I keep some of the more unusual commenters at bay. But if you want to say howdy, maybe you got a question, a comment, by all means, fire away. I will do my very best to respond. First out the gate tonight is Semper Buffo. Gleeman RX is with us, as is Wallona's Cave, Mike, Pete Strakulich, Kevin King, and Diesel Shot. And I would not be surprised the lovely and talented Miss Sarah D weren't lurking in the shadows tonight. Yes, she is one of our chat moderators. So she has a glittery banhammer. So behave. Behave. All right. Got a lot cooking tonight. I know quite a few of you watched last night, and I received some emails from people who were watching last night, and they thought I kind of got ambushed. No, not really. Not really. But I did respond to everybody who sent me an email too. But yeah, I was fine. I know Kelsey Dion joined us in chat. I guess she had the impression that I was talking about that she was paying people to review her game. Never said that. Never said that. In fact, I had stuck up for her when that was going around about Shadow Dark. That, as far as everybody knew, Ben Milton was the only person who was paid for a review of Shadow Dark. I don't know. I do not know, but I think I handled it fairly well. It wasn't like I lost my cool or anything like that. Pete Strakulich says, great show last night. Bravo. Well, you know, it's a topic people don't want to talk about. And the reality is, I could continue the topic tonight. I am not going to, although I will mention, prime example. If you follow me on social media, I already posted this. Prime example of the nonsense I was talking about last night. So I see in my recommended videos on YouTube, some outlet I'm not familiar with. And the title to their video was something along the lines of Shadow Dark Berries, Dungeons and Dragons. Is this the end or some bullshit like that? I was like, come on, man. It's like every time some game comes out and it hits Kickstarter and does well, all of a sudden everybody's going to jump on like, oh, it's the Dungeons and Dragons killer, which these people know damn well is not the case. Not to say that I don't want to see Wizards of the Coast maybe get a little air let out of its balloon, right? And I would be more than happy to see more true competition to Dungeons and Dragons. At this point, I don't see it happen. I do not see it happening. But I had to laugh because it's like, come on, man. And of course, it was like the video was like 3 hours old and it had like 3,000 views already. I'm like, yeah. And I know people tell me, it's like, Jeff, well, just play the game. I'm sorry. I was raised differently. I have what's known as integrity. Or at least I try to have some integrity. Walona's Cave says they don't do reviews anymore due to all the nonsense. It's funny. I don't really have problems with, every once in a while you get some knucklehead commenting on a review. But for the most part, I mean, just like if I took my positive versus negative across all of the videos I've ever done, I run about, 98.5%, which is unusual. It is kind of unusual. Stephen from Roll for Combat is with us. Yes, I actually did receive that email you sent today. So at least maybe we can get back on track here. They said that was their title for the video. It's the end of Dungeons and Dragons. And it's like, that like stock art of some woman screaming. Raphael Mores is with us. I'm trying on the last name. Probably butchered that. But hello, welcome aboard. All right, let's jump on into the news because I've got some cool stuff to talk about and maybe another mini controversy to launch. We'll see. Following a successful crowdfunding run, Monty Python's co-curricular medieval reenactment program is now available in print. Here's the latest from Crowbar Creative and Exalted Funeral. This is a fully licensed educational program for serious students of history. It is by no means a comprehensive manual for running imaginative medieval-themed role-playing games, lovingly ripping off the works of Monty Python. Betwixt these firm yet supple covers, one shall find everything one needs to experience the joy of medieval study, from character creation and factions to ready-to-run quests and monsters, including the French. One need not be familiar with Monty Python's work, nor is experience with role-playing games required. If you have experience with the latter, you're probably too silly a person to participate and should stop listening immediately. This game features an original rules-light gaming system with spam, guidance on designing adventures with spam, ready-to-run quests, spam, and guidance on designing one's own adventures, character creation, spam, bestiary, spam, and dramatis persona sections, tables for generating all sorts of things with spam, original hand-painted illumination, and 6.2% more spam. You can score the Sensible Middle Class Edition with PDFs for an MSRP of $50. Or you can grab the PDF over at Drive-Thru RPG for $40. Yes, you heard that correctly. The PDF is only $10 less than the physical book with PDFs. So obviously enough, this is a title that Crowbar Creative and Exalted Funeral are trying to steer people to picking up the physical books. Thought that was kind of interesting. Well, that was kind of interesting. Strangely enough, I have not seen a review copy of this. I know Crowbar Crowbar Creative had reached out a few times asking if I were interested in reviewing this, and I seem to recall Exalted Funeral touching base once. I would not be surprised if one thought the other was handling it. So I did shoot an email to Exalted Funeral. So maybe we'll get a chance to do a review of this. Maybe not. I mean, like Monty Python, I think trying to pull off humorous role-playing games is pretty tough, but still. Better with Bacon is with us. I believe this is the first time visit in chat for Better with Bacon, or at least I don't recall the nickname. So welcome aboard. Let's move on to our next news piece, because we've actually had loads of news from Goodman Games of late, and the hits keep coming. As Tome of Adventure Volume 4, The Purple Planet for Dungeon Crawl Classics, is now available in print and PDF. Prepare for Harley Stroh's Sword and Planet fantasy epic. Your characters are cast across the cosmos to a foreign world, left to die beneath a weirdling sun and its sickening rays. Their survival depends as much upon a quick wit as a quick blade. Even the finest chain hauberk must fail beneath the crush of an alien horde. Dungeon Crawl Classics Tome of Adventure Volume 4 is a level 4 exploration-style adventure spanning scores of leagues. On the Purple Planet, your characters cross hundreds of miles of alien wasteland where they face predatory creatures, deadly mushroom jungles, and thousands of factious savage man-beasts locked in an endless war. In the course of the sprawling hex crawl, characters have the opportunity to assume mastery of their own war bands, pit faction against faction, plumb ancient burial mounds, respect the age-old taboos, and experiment with deadly artifacts, the remnants of the last war. How characters meet each other challenge determines whether they discover the secrets to returning home or slip beneath the sands of the wastes, succumbing to the perils of the Purple Planet. For those few with the courage to remain, you're offered a world for the conquering. This 219-page hardcover with PDF carries an MSRP of $49.99. If you want to grab the PDF alone, you can do so over at Drive-Thru RPG. It is part of the GM's Day sale, which I think has 4 days left to it. 3 or 4. So you still got an opportunity to save some dough. So you can grab it for $23.99, or if you miss the sale, it'll be back to its regular price of $29.99. Now, I'm kind of curious. I don't know if this is a revamped edition of, was it Dungeon Crawl Classics number 84? Because remember, this kickstarted. I don't know. I don't know if Harley Stroh expanded upon an adventure that he had created previously. I think he was the writer for number 84, The Purple Planet. And I think there's like 84.5 and stuff like that. But still, nice sword and planet, or as I like to refer to it, space fantasy role-playing campaign. Also want to mention that there is a slipcase set that Goodman Games has released with all 4 of the Tome of Adventure volumes. And the first 3 actually collect a bunch of the Dungeon Crawl Classics adventures designed for Dungeon Crawl Classics. Because as we mention all the time, the original Dungeon Crawl Classics releases were for Dungeons and Dragons. So there is that. Kevin King says it's the original content with significant new material added to it. Nice. Nice. Wilderness Cave says there's a new Pathfinder bundle up on Humble Bundle. Well, I know today was the last day of the Kingmaker bundle. So maybe they've rolled out a new one. I guess it's got some Cobalt Press goodies as well, which would make that for first edition Pathfinder, because I don't think Cobalt Press has done anything for Pathfinder in a while. So I think when Pathfinder changed editions, I think Cobalt Press stopped designing stuff for that. I could be wrong. I could easily be wrong. It's not like I'm, so Better with Bacon says they're a longtime watcher. You know, as soon as I said, oh, yeah, you know, I don't recognize that, I was like, shit, you know what? Now I do recognize that. Oh, Kathy Evans is with us in chat. Hey, I think Kathy Evans is new to the channel. Welcome. Dumbass Jeff. Stupid. I know, like I'm supposed to keep all these people straight in my head and all the games rattling around in there. Riley Thorpe is with us, wondering what's my least favorite monster manual. I will have to take a moment to think about that. And then, you know what? We'll actually tackle that after the news. There's something else I wanted to mention too after the news. Don't worry, it's fun. Relax. I'm not going to rant about something. But we're going to move on to our next news piece because the Scrying Dutchman has a modern horror role-playing game, which is built on Shadow Dark, which you already know has buried Dungeons and Dragons. I mean, there's video. See, the funny thing is, I actually really like Shadow Dark. I don't have any beef with it. It's, you know, it's just the disingenuous tabletop gaming journalism that I'm just choking on it. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about this modern horror role-playing game, which is up for crowdfunding. And I've got the skinny on Blacklight. Blacklight is an expansion for Kelsey Dion's acclaimed Shadow Dark tabletop role-playing game, introducing new rules and mechanics to propel your games into a modern era. Step into the shadows as part of a covert organization of skilled professionals, the last line of defense against relentless extra-dimensional forces of darkness. Alongside detailed setting information, Blacklight introduces rules for incorporating firearms, a wide array of modern equipment, vehicles, and much more into your game. Important to note, you do need to have the full Shadow Dark rules, or at least its quick start rules, in order to use Blacklight. Now, there is a Kickstarter video. It's about 3 minutes in length. So let's give it a look. The Kickstarter project for Blacklight is already over 300% funded. You can reserve a copy of the hardcover print on demand with PDF for a pledge of approximately $32. Score just the PDF alone for a pledge of approximately $10 through March 31st. Expected delivery is March of next year. And Mark Hawkswell is with us asking, is the Scrying Dutchman actually Dutch? Yes, they are. So there you have it. Kind of cool. Sort of interesting there. We're seeing more and more third-party sort of Shadow Dark releases that are not necessarily aimed at a fantasy role-playing game, but kind of expanding out on that. So pretty cool. This might be worth taking a peek at. I will mention that the Scrying Dutchman website, I don't think it's been updated for about 3 years. So keep that in mind. So if you are interested, you might want to just go over to Kickstarter.com and put in Blacklight. Let's move on to another news piece because there's another crowdfunding project which is worthy of your attention. And it's from my friends over at Trollord Games, because I've got the latest on Castle Zagyig, which is on Backer Kit. For the first time ever, Trollord Games is bringing Castle Zagyig to life in its entirety, exactly as Gary Gygax envisioned it. We're meticulously crafting decades of notes, maps, and designs from the father of role-playing into a definitive, groundbreaking tabletop role-playing game sandbox for tabletop gamers everywhere. With an incredible team led by Mike Stewart and joined by Luke Gygax, Jason Vey, and more, Trollord Games are rebuilding Castle Zagyig over the course of 2 crowdfunding campaigns. Here's what to expect from the first and current campaign. Trollord Games is publishing 3 hardcover volumes. Each is going to come in its own box set, which will contain all the relevant maps needed for seamless gameplay. In accordance with Gary Gygax's wishes, Trollords are publishing Castle Zagyig using the Castles and Crusades role-playing game. Of course, Castles and Crusades is a fast-paced, story-driven fantasy tabletop role-playing game that's accessible to gamers of all ages and experience levels. So we'll have the first volume, The Citadel, and it's a complete setting guide for the town of Igsburg and the Outs neighborhood. It contains hundreds of hours of adventuring content and can easily be ported to any other fantasy campaign setting. Volume 2, The Ruins, consists of the Mouths of Madness, the ruins of the castle precincts, the wall towers, the castle fortress, and the first level of the dungeon and the surrounding Eastmark region. Vicious monsters, conniving hordes of scavengers, and traps of the most nefarious kind can be found around every corner. In the ruins, you're free to begin your dungeon crawl or seek out adventure under the open sky. And then there's Volume 3. In the cellars, you will hear the haunted beckoning of dungeon levels 2 through 5, as well as their respective sublevels. This totals 7 dungeon levels for your party to explore. It's the dungeon crawl to end all dungeon crawls, and it just scratches the surface of what Trollords has planned for the Castle Zagyig series. There is another approximately 3 minutes crowdfunding video, so let's take a peek at that.
Some maps are drawn but never followed. Some adventures dreamed of but never experienced. To the Mad Mage, this was the greatest sin of all. He asked each of us, if you really want to be great, how far will you go? For over 15 years, we had no answer for him. Until today. Our journey to Castle Zagig starts now. The fortified town of Yigsburg hums with life. Traders, rogues, and scholars all gather together on the edge of the unknown. Depending on your neighborhood, the cobbled streets may be lined with strangers of an unscrupulous sort, but make no mistake, the people here hold the key to untold wealth and knowledge. Beyond the town's walls, past the rivers and the rolling hills, the ruins await. Crumbling towers, forgotten halls, and a darkness that stirs again at last. Most who enter the caves below may never be seen again, but those who do emerge will be remembered in legends for generations to come. And beneath it all, deep in the belly of the world, lie the upper floors of the dungeons. In this lightless place, you'll find twisted experiments, lost artifacts, and horrors unseen by mortal eyes. These are the first 5 layers of a labyrinth built by the Archmage Zagig himself. This is more than a campaign setting. It's a gateway to adventures beyond your wildest dreams. So, will you walk with me, traveler? Don't you want to be great? How far will you go?
Did you enjoy the live action stock footage of the medieval themed goings on that have absolutely nothing to do with this game? I know I did. I don't know what was going on there. I don't know. You can reserve copies of all 3 of these box sets with PDFs for a $230 pledge. If you want to just get the box sets themselves without PDFs, you can do that for a $180 pledge, or just score the PDFs for an $80 pledge through April 4th. I will say, and this is something I don't like about Backer Kit, it's never clear when something is aiming to fulfill. You know, at least like on Kickstarter, it says in the actual pledge when you can expect it. Now, that doesn't mean that's when you're going to get it. I'm just saying. But from my experience, normally with crowdfunding projects, it's usually about a year with Trollord Games. So I'll be guessing it is next March. So I see Troy Cornelson is with us. Welcome. And Mark Huxwell asked, what was the question that popped up? Well, maybe it wasn't Mark who asked that. I think there was some misconception that this is just one big book. It is 3 volumes. In fact, all of Castle Zagig is going to be 5 volumes. Now, I'm sort of curious if volume 1, the first box set, is going to include what was in Castle Zagig, which just came out last year. It does sound like some of it's going to be from that book. And then there's like a neighborhood of Eagsburg that's going to be included. Kind of weird. Kind of weird. So Diesel Shot asks, how big are these dungeon levels? They're pretty good. Pretty good size. I would say Castle Zagyig is a mega dungeon of no doubt. But here's where I've got an issue. And if you follow the Gaming Gang, you know I am tight with the Troll Lords. I consider them to be my pals in the industry. But I think $50 for PDFs when you're already buying the physical box sets is ridiculous. I'm sorry, I've got to say it. Because normally with Troll Lord games, if you bought a physical book, you would get the PDF. I don't know if that somehow changed, but that's how it had been. Now, there are companies out there who charge extra for the PDF. Our friends over at Cobalt Press, prime example. And it's usually like $10 for the PDF. And yes, I get it. There's some extra expense involved to format PDFs. But to charge people $50 for the PDFs when they're already spending $180 on the box sets, no. I'm sorry. I will die on that hill. I'm sorry. It's just not right. Just not right. If they wanted to make all three box sets together a $200 pledge, include the PDFs, I think that would be very fair. I think that would be pretty fair. Gleeman RX says, Troll Lord Games web store does charge extra for PDFs quite a bit. Yeah, so that has changed because that was not always the case. I will also say that you can get Castles and Crusades absolutely free. So let's not forget that. And yes, like I said, I understand PDFs do cost money to format, but we're not talking crazy amounts simply because you already have all that information digitally to start with. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. But I did want to share this. And I'll tell you what, I am probably going to have an interview with Steven Chenault from Troll Lord Games after GaryCon next week, because Troll Lord Games already reached out to see if I'd be interested in talking with him. And of course, I'm always interested in talking with Steven. Joke around with them, talk about UFOs, and then of course we'll talk about this. But I promise you, I will ask him about these PDFs. I will not dodge that because I think by now you folks know, even companies that I'm very tight with, if I think they're doing something that's just not right, I tell them. I tell them. Semper Buffo says they just bought the Star Trek 2, I guess I should say second edition, starter set boxed. They got the PDF free from Modiphius. Modiphius usually does that. Yeah, Modiphius gives you a free PDF. Cubicle 7 gives you a free PDF. Of course, you've got to order from them. Or I don't know who still uses like the bits and mortar system, but I know some of those were around where you could buy it at a friendly local game store, and inside the book is a code for you to redeem for the game in PDF. I don't know. I don't think as many companies do the bit and mortar sort of thing any longer. But it is kind of cool. So yes, Chaosium Inc. You buy it from Chaosium. Plus, if you get the PDF from Chaosium and you decide you're going to buy the physical book, they'll actually discount the physical book, the price of that PDF. So that's pretty cool too. Chaosium is another company I'm super tight with. In fact, speaking of Chaosium real quick, we were talking about Cthulhu by Gaslight. the Keeper's Guide. It is in transit. I will have it on the 18th, maybe even before then. And I promise you, I will have a review of that on the 24th when the embargo gets lifted. All right, final news piece. Arriving in PDF from the aforementioned Cubicle 7 games is the Imperium Maledictum Macarian Requisition Guide. And here's the latest. One lone Departamento Munitorium scribe has been burdened with the Sisyphean task of completing an inventory of the Macarian sector's total stockpiles of munitions and assets. It will take Auditor Epsilon Decantus far more than his singular meager lifetime to complete, as he travels between systems and worlds to audit countless Departamento Munitorium depots, archiviums, and fleet yards, slipping between the gears of the Imperium's ceaseless war machine. But Decantus is one of the most dedicated adepts ever to have lived. He knows that his task must be undertaken. His life is a small sacrifice compared to the colossal needs, checks, and balances the Imperium demands to function daily. This volume, the Macarian Requisition Guide, represents a fragment of Decantus's life-consuming task. However, to agents of the Imperium such as yourself and your illustrious patrons, it is a veritable expansion of the offerings that began within Imperium Maledictum. New equipment, weapons, and a whole host of vehicles. Decantus's attention to detail has uncovered the inner workings of many Imperial services, such as methods to charter void ship travel and take on hirelings. For each topic, we've added plentiful advice and options for game masters to draw these aspects into their campaigns. Right now, I should say you should have been able to pre-order this book, the 128-page book, for an MSRP of $39.99, which would include the PDF, or grab the PDF over at DriveThruRPG for $19.99. But strangely enough, this was supposed to go live for pre-order this afternoon, and it did not. So I'm sharing the news. It'll probably be up tomorrow. But yes, it is not exactly out this minute. Well, the page isn't up for you to order it. And weirdly enough, I have the PDF because I was sent the PDF by Cubicle 7 Games. So that's kind of wild. Shozamba85 is joining us in chat. So welcome aboard. All right. So essentially what this book is it is like a gear guide, but there's other chapters in it as well. So like hirelings and stuff like that. I have not had an opportunity to take a peek at it, but I did actually use the PDF to share these images with you. So there is that. All right, that's it for the news tonight. Of course, I was just talking about DriveThruRPG. Don't forget, Gaming Gang, thus the Dispatch, is affiliated with the One Bookshelf sites. So if you're going to stop by DriveThruRPG, Dungeon Masters Guild, Storytellers Vault, Wargame Vault, any of those One Bookshelf sites, please click on one of the banner ads over at thegaminggang.com, because if you do, and then if you happen to make a purchase, I get 5% of that sale, and all those nickels, dimes, and quarters really do add up and help keep thegaminggang.com around. If you like the video, if you dig the channel, if you find the Gaming Gang to be a valuable resource, hell, if you just like what we do, you can always stop on by paypal.me/gaminggang to make a small donation. Hell, you can buy me a 2-liter bottle of soda. Or not. And this month, Joshua Edwards and the Madman have stopped by paypal.me/thegaminggang and made not small donations. So big thanks to them. Thank you to all of you out there who either and or whatever use those banner ads for the One Bookshelf sites or stop by paypal.me/thegaminggang. Much, much appreciated. All right. So I will answer one of Bradley Thorpe's questions because he threw two of them out there. What do you think this is, an AMA? What is my least favorite monster manual? Okay, if we are talking Dungeons and Dragons, and the reality is I would think if I really put my mind to it, I would say probably my least favorite bestiary is the Fiend Folio. And I know a lot of people out there love the Fiend Folio. For one, I dropped out of D&D while it was still in the first edition. So there were first edition books that came out I've never seen. I've heard of. I know their titles, but I've never actually looked at them. I've never owned them. So, you know, I don't know if it was because I didn't like the art. I think that's probably one of the main reasons I didn't care for Fiend Folio, because I know there are some races in there that are still really popular, monsters in there that are really popular. But I think another reason why I didn't like it that much was there were a lot of oddball, goofy creatures in it that kind of was like, I don't know. So yeah, so that's what I would say. That's what I would say. Now, we are going to be talking about monsters tonight because it is another edition of Let's Build a Fantasy Role-Playing Game. And yes, our topic tonight is going to be monsters. Kevin King said they hated the Trapper Keeper format they did for a while with second edition. Completely agree. I completely agree. I hated when they had the basically the paper was punched to put in a folder. It was like, and then it was like, okay, this just tears apart so flipping easily. And I get it. It was like, oh, because, you know, even Harn is like that. There is the hardcover book now for Harn World, but they still release Harn. Like, what is it? What is it that they? I think it's not their Kingdom books, but there is still a line from Columbia Games that they still release. And it's got the punched paper for you to put into a folder. It's kind of weird. I want to say, I think it's Harnmaster. Harnmaster sold like that because I actually put it into a binder so I could, you know, read it normally rather than, oh, pick it up. All righty. So, as I mentioned, we are going to talk about monsters tonight. But first, I think it's time for a brief intermission.
It's intermission time, folks. Time out for a delicious snack in our sparkling refreshment building. Every item a fresh, appetizing taste treat.
Mason Dots presents dotsmanship, or the gentle art of eating dots.
Never eat dots alone. You gotta share them. That's beautiful.
Trading, you can trade greens for oranges.
But never oranges for red.
That's right.
I saved the yellow ones.
I love you, Cheryl.
For you, Mildred.
That's nice.
I don't know what to say, Steve.
Mason Dots. Delicious. Any way you eat them.
King Kong.
on King Kong glasses. Get one free at Burger Chef when you buy a Big Chef or Super Chef, large fries, and a large serving of Coca-Cola. Or get one with purchase of a regular-sized Coke at a special price. King Kong glasses. Get all 4 for your kids. You want a straw?
You get what you like at Burger Chef.
You won't find anyone who doesn't drink Wilkins instant coffee.
I'll look high and low.
How low can you get?
Journey now to an age undreamed of. An age of mystery and magic. Of swords and sorcery. The warrior and the sorceress on a planet lit by twin suns. Evil warlords battle to control the fate of an entire dynasty. A mighty warrior rises out of legend to free an enslaved sorceress.
There was a time when I could command.
And I would obey.
Together, they forge the mystical sword whose blade cannot be broken. The ultimate struggle between good and evil. Sorcery. Dungeons.
I don't work cheap.
David Carradine in The Warrior and the Sorceress. The mightiest of all heroes. In the greatest of all adventures. The Warrior and the Sorceress. Their sacred bond cannot be broken.
There once was a time. Line, please. Yeah, I'm sorry. David Carradine would not have lasted 5 minutes. I don't know what's with these old sword and sorcery movies where it's like, okay, it's like, I'm kicking this guy. Really? Really? You're going to leave yourself out of position so you can kick this guy? Shedbot V42 is with us tonight. Says, I love how the fight scenes just look like a mosh pit. Pete's Rackridge says they're looking for this on Tubi tonight. So, something I want to mention. Last night I was talking about how, I really don't watch, like gaming outlets and stuff like that, which is true. But I did not mean to imply that I don't watch stuff on YouTube. And there is a channel that I would like to recommend you give a peek. Because if you're anything like me, maybe you're like around my age, you'll remember those old Saturday afternoon science fiction movies and horror movies and the various different like monster toys and collectibles and stuff like that. And there is a channel, it's called the Atomic Snack Bar. And the videos are 10 to 20 minutes in length. And there'll be things like top 1950s robots, top 1960s giant insects, or what have you. And the host is pretty good. And it's funny because he also has a commercial break in his videos. And he does the same thing that I do with the brief intermissions. So I was like, oh, that's cool. And he's also a gamer. because I saw one video he was showing, I think it was his last Christmas haul of cool stuff that he got. And he had gotten 4th edition Basic Fantasy. And then there was another video, because a lot of times he's in front of all these different collectibles and that, all these, like monsters and things like that. And he had Hero Quest behind him. And then he was also talking about he has a tabletop role-playing game shelf. So I was like, oh, okay. So I highly recommend giving a peek to Atomic Snack Bar. And if you pop on over there and you like the channel, leave a comment on whatever video you happen to be watching and tell him Jeff at the Gaming Gang sent you. Because I sort of have the impression he might actually know of this channel. Because I think he's 10 years younger than I am. But he, same sort of, I remember seeing this movie in the theater. And yeah, it's pretty fun. It's a fun channel. It's a fun channel. I found myself binge watching his videos about a week ago. And I'm still catching up on a few things. So kind of cool. Kind of cool. All right. So tonight, we're going to continue the Let's Build a Fantasy Role-Playing Game series with the discussion on monsters. This is something that I've talked about quite a bit as of late, because I think a lot of role-playing games, especially if they're fantasy role-playing games, really drop the ball as far as their bestiaries. Now, it's funny because it's kind of like, well, it's how it's always been. Well, okay, if it's always been that way, that doesn't necessarily mean that that's a good thing. So if you recall the game that we're talking about putting together, which funny enough, I've had a couple of publishers reach out and they both said if I decide to actually put this on paper, they would do the layout absolutely free. So I'm like, okay. But the reality is this game book would be probably like the length of Black Hack 2nd edition, something like that. Wouldn't be a big, long book. So you might recall that our action resolution is roll under the attributes. We've got our traditional attributes, 3 to 18 range. And we have advantage and disadvantage, but we don't have the roll 2 dice, take the better or the worse of the two. It is a 20-sided die-driven game. But of course, you would utilize all of the various different polyhedral dice. So our advantage and disadvantage actually starts off with a 4-sided die. So if you had advantage, you would roll your 20-sided die in a 4-sided die, and you would actually take the result of the 4-sided die and add it to your attribute. So if you had a 12, but you had, say, advantage, or you had a skill that was applicable to what you were trying to do, you would get to roll that 4-sided die. So if you got a 4, then you would actually have 16. So the reason why I do that is because I think, at least in my opinion, advantage and disadvantage are just way too powerful. So if you say you're playing Dungeons and Dragons and you're doing something and you have disadvantage, you have got an uphill battle. And on the flip side of that, if you have advantage, it's pretty much in the bag for the most part that you're going to succeed. So to me, it's far more than just an advantage or disadvantage. So that's why we would be looking at using the 4-sided dice. And then, of course, if you build on that, if you had, say, a skill of 2, you get to roll a D6. When that goes up to a D8, to all the way, the maximum would be a D10. So that is what we're looking at as far as our action resolution. We talked a little bit about magic. So the idea I've got, so we talked about magic and that like intelligence for arcane magic and then wisdom for divine magic. And you can spend points. So your pool of points that you could spend is your intelligence, is your wisdom, and it refreshes once a day. So if you're like an evil character, it would be at midnight. If you're a good character, it would be at noon or like at sunrise, whatever, right? And what you'd be able to do is you would actually, depending on the level of the spell, we'd probably call it circle or something like that, tier. That's how much it would cost you to cast it. And all spells are fairly weak to start off with. So you're looking at just D4 as far as damage. So let's say it's a first tier spell. It costs you 1 point from your intelligence pool. But you could buff it. And you could buff it depending on how experienced you are. You could buff it by that number. So as an example, like if you're like a starting magic using character, you could only buff it by a die, which is a 4-sided die. So you could spend an extra point to buff it to get advantage, or you could spend an extra point to buff the damage. So take it from a D4 to a D6. And then, of course, as you become more experienced, your character is able to spend more of that pool on each spell. So I also would want to do that with the fighters. So with the martial characters. So if you were, say, a melee character, same thing, you have a strength pool. And if you were a ranged user, remember we were talking about it would actually be intelligence, which would determine your ranged combat. Same thing, you'd be able to spend your pool from that. Thieves, their dexterity. So just kind of giving you an idea of the workings of the game. And combat would be fast, it would be furious, and it would be lethal. It would not be a game where you are looking at spending an hour with a combat encounter. You would not have those kind of situations. In fact, I just did my review for Tales of Argosa, which I loved. I gave it a 10 out of 10. If you have not checked out that review, give it a peek. There were a lot of things in that which I've already talked about. Oh yeah, that's kind of what we want to do with our game, which I thought was really wild that I was on the same wavelength as someone who's already published their game. So anyway, so that was kind of what we were looking at. Bog One is joining us in chat, as is Dark Autumn Scribe. Welcome. I think I've said hello to everybody who's in chat tonight. If I've missed you, I don't think I said hello to Chris D. So welcome aboard. Anyway, if I missed you, I apologize. All right, so let's talk monsters. So monsters would have hit dice. So you'd have your 1-hit die, 2-hit die. We wouldn't be looking at like half a hit die, but the hit die would be like a D6. Because one of the aspects of the game we're building is that characters and creatures, NPCs, monsters, all of that are not huge bags of hit points. That you don't have tons of hit points. So even an experienced fighter probably is going to have 25 hit points. Because remember, just a regular blow is going to do 1 to 4 points of damage for someone or something that's not very powerful, not very experienced, or whatever. So we would use the hit dice, and we would also have that same sort of advantage, disadvantage for creatures and monsters. And the main thing we would focus on is not only combat, because we want a fully rounded entity. So something that I always kind of laugh at, we talked about the Dungeon Denizens release last night, which is from Goodman Games. It's for Dungeon Crawl Classics. And I think they also have it for 5e, if I remember correctly. It's over 550 creatures. Let's be honest here. Do you really need 550 creatures? Or do you maybe need to start off with, to start running a role-playing game? Or do you need 50 really solid monsters that you can utilize that are going to be unique? See, that's one of the things that I notice with a lot of bestiaries that come out. There's little tweaks here and there, but a lot of things are very, very similar. Shozama 85 says they need 551. Well, then right there, Dungeon Denizens should be right up your alley. Steven's chiming in with his bestiaries have 150 or so very strong and award-winning creatures in them. Yeah, but Steven's the guy giving away the awards. I'm just joking. But the issue that we see with a lot of bestiaries and a lot of core books that have monsters, and I don't really want to denigrate these publishers, these creators and that, because there you go. Steven's like, not true. All caps. I guess he means that. Like I said, because it's how it's always been done. But just because it's monster stat blocks and information about monsters has been presented kind of the same way for decades does not necessarily mean that that's the right way to go about it. So what I would look to do is, first of all, on each of the monsters, focus on what makes them unique. What purpose do they actually serve in this game world? Because a lot of times we see the creatures, all their main use on that game world is to be killed by the player characters. That's it. That is the purpose they serve. They serve as experience point generators, as opposed to actually having some sort of society or some sort of need that they're looking to address. So I'll give you a great example. Like, let's take goblins. And pretty much across the board, regardless of what role-playing game system you're utilizing, goblins are pretty weak. Kobolds, same thing. Pretty weak. So if they're so weak, how have they survived to this point? Got to be something. Got to be something, right? So as an example, goblins, and I'm just kind of pulling this out of the air here. Goblins would use pack tactics. So they would try to swarm characters. And maybe one of their big abilities would be that their attacks, which would be very weak, but their attacks would actually get boosted for every goblin on top of one engaged with the player character. Or maybe if a player character is alone, maybe they've broken off from the group. Maybe they're not fighting together as a group, trying to, defend each other, that the goblins would try to overwhelm the player characters. Because think of Lord of the Rings, right? Think of, it is in Fellowship of the Ring, isn't it? Yeah, it is. When they go through, when they're going through the mines of Moria. I mean, yeah, those goblins, just one-on-one, they're pretty easy. When you've got tons of them, no. Just like kobolds. I know one of the themes for kobolds has always been, well, not always, but mainly since many games have now made them reptilian, that kobolds tend to be tinkerers and trap makers, and they tend to be fairly sly. Whereas goblins would be, and I gotta say, I like the presentation of Pathfinder goblins. They're kind of loony. They don't cooperate very well. I like that. I'd probably steal that. So it'd be like, yeah, okay. But I think that would be a huge thing as far as who mentioned, oh, there you go. Shazam85 said Habitat Society, Monster Ecology, Diplomacy, Diesel Shot mentions, very underrated in design generally. Yeah, I have a real issue with that. Now, I have not had an opportunity to check out the Monster Overhaul. I have people tell me all the time that it is excellent and it addresses some of these issues. Something I would also probably look to do is maybe take a page from Dragonbane, where you actually roll on a table to see what that creature does in combat. Because funny enough, that table actually really does offload a lot of responsibility from the game master to have to sit there and be like, oh, okay, what are they going to do now? Which, of course, you could roll a random die anyway. So why not roll the random die and look at the table, right? Be like, oh, yeah, okay, I could do this. Or at least give you something to rip off of. So I would look to have maybe 50 monsters. I would also probably aim the first release in this system. And what did I call it before? Dipshits and dumbasses. I know that's not would really be the name, but still. I would probably aim that first release at being about 50 pages, having, say, 20 pages devoted to the core rules, core mechanics, the combat, as well as spells, because using that whole basis of the spells starting out with the first tier, everything's like a D4. Also means that you don't have to sit there and be like, okay, well, I shoot frost from my fingertips. Oh, I shoot fire from my fingertips. Oh, I shoot lightning from my fingertips. I shoot fire out of my, doesn't matter. Because essentially what you're looking at is you're firing off some sort of element from your fingertips that do 1d4 damage. So you can craft the spells very easily if they are spells that tend to do damage. If they're like protective spells or area effect spells, Another way that you could boost them by spending points from your magic pool would be to actually boost the area or boost the targets. So maybe, okay, so I spend a point. Now instead of one target, I've got 2 targets that I can include as long as they're close by each other. The game we're putting together is not going to be some big, like, tactical, sort of game. We're not going to be sitting there, be like, oh, okay, well, this pole arm's got a strike rank of 4 and this pole arm's got a strike rank of 3. No, not at all. Plus, all your hand weapons, and this actually harkens back, if I remember right, this kind of harkens back to Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay First Edition, because didn't all of the weapons just simply do 1d6 damage, and then it got boosted? I'm trying to remember if they had those success levels. It's been so long. I mean, we're talking, what, 40 years, maybe 30 years since probably closer to 40 years that Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay first came out. So yeah, so Kevin King asks, I suppose one question is, how setting neutral is this system intended to be? Should the monsters just cover all the major tropes, or is it the intent to have a unique setting? The intent would be to be fairly generic, to aim more for, I don't want to say low fantasy, because I also don't want a game world where everybody and their brother uses magic. And now that's not to say that all characters are locked into a class, because we do have kind of like archetypes. So it would be possible if you had a fighter archetype and you gained your experience points, because the experience points will be used to pay for improvements to the character. You'll pay for advancements. You could pick up magic use. It's more expensive as a non-magic user to buy, but you could pick it up. So you could easily create like a sword spell character or spell sword character, however you want to refer to it. Yeah. So yeah, pretty neutral as far as setting goes. What we probably would aim to do is utilize many of the tried and true monsters that have been out there since the beginning of fantasy role-playing games and give them a home. And what I mean by that is make them actually serve some sort of purpose in the game world, as opposed to just being monsters to slay or creatures to trick your way past. That the creatures actually are, serve some sort of purpose. Because I think, in my opinion, the most interesting fantasy game worlds, and it doesn't really boil down to, oh, well, how fantastical is it? Is it low magic? Is it epic? I think the most interesting aspects of fantasy role-playing games is, how well does that game world feel like it continues to operate without the player characters? And that's not that difficult to pull off. Sadly, you don't see it a whole lot. But just like when I run fantasy role-playing games, my characters are not superheroes or anything like that. They don't start off as, super heroic first-level characters. None of that. I prefer not to have them just be completely squishy, like, say, Dungeon Crawl Classics funnel adventures, which I do like, don't get me wrong, but that's usually not how I want, like, a group of characters to start off. But yeah, I think the most interesting aspect of game worlds to me is, does the world work? Or is this just backdrop like in a play where if you just lean on it, it all just collapses because there's no real framework for the game world. So that hopefully that's kind of an answer to Kevin King's question. So what do you folks think as far as monsters? Would you want the focus to be on what the hell are these things? And not just a stat block that's like, okay, now I got to go buy the monsters know what they're doing so I can figure out how to utilize these in combat. That you actually provide, and it could even just be bullet points. You know, like we were talking about goblins. A bullet point could be goblins try to overwhelm larger opponents. And then in the stat block, we would have that ability, or we would have like a little rule down there talking about like overwhelming tactics. They don't have to be the only creature that would be able to utilize that, but we would also try to avoid, because if you think about it, this is how I look at it. If you strip away the cosmetics for all of, like, maybe not all of, but a good number of these sentient one-hit die challenge rating 1 creatures out there, they're all way too similar. What makes them different is the cosmetics. What they look like tends to be what differentiates them. Yeah, of course. Yeah, so I'm looking at their stat blocks and, well, this one's got an intelligence of 12. This one's got an intelligence of 11. So obviously the 12 is more intelligent. But you want to split those hairs? I don't. So, all right. Just thought. I am actually banging around, maybe taking a week off to try to put some of this stuff down on paper. I do want to do a little more play testing. We started play testing it, but we were mainly focused on combat and action resolution. And the gang liked it. I got to say, they were enjoying themselves. But it's not as if they've got a lot of games that they can compare it to. You know, it's not like, oh, well, this is the 10th fantasy role-playing game that we've all played. Pete Strachwich says, I like actual fucking monsters. The take on monsters is they aren't humanized. They're beasts, killers, hungry for humanity. They live to die in a blaze of glory. No Twilight vampires for him. Yes, I would say I agree with you on that. As far as, it's like, you know, I don't know how it goes around other people's game tables for the most part, but I always have the impression that there are probably far too many game masters out there who have their creatures all fight to the last, that they don't use morale. They don't have, you know, intelligent creatures or NPCs surrender. It's all just heck. So, but like beasts and things like that, yeah, most definitely, I would certainly make some of, you know, there are animals out there that, you know, if you hurt them, they are not going to stop until you're dead. So yeah, I get it. Bog One says humans can make some of the best monsters sometimes. I think that's something else that we see too much of, where you'll have the kind of core enemies of an adventure. And it's like, oh, okay. Well, they're kobolds. Why are they kobolds? No reason. They're just kobolds. Well, if that's the case, might as well just make them human. So I think a lot of times we see humanoids inserted into adventures for no reason. Absolutely no reason. They serve no additional purpose. So you might as well just be like, okay, well, they're human bandits then. I don't know. It's just how I kind of see it. All righty. So that is it for this time out. Do want to mention, I did receive the old Margrave today. So on Tuesday's show, we will be diving on in to take a peek. I will have my campaign builder Dungeons and Ruins review up very shortly too. And as I already mentioned yesterday, I will have my review of the Dark Tower slipcase set this weekend. So be sure to stay tuned for that. All righty then. If you were watching live, thank you very much. If you watched live and took part in chat, thank you kindly. Yes. St. Patrick's Day, yes. It's the only time I ever bust this hat out. This is like if the show's on St. Patrick's Day, or if it's a show, last show before St. Patrick's Day. Because the Irish, we don't really get all worked up about St. Patrick's Day. It's mostly other people who get all worked up about it. Anyway, tip of the cap to you if you took part in chat, because not only are you keeping me company, you're keeping each other company as well, especially when I'm sharing news pieces and babbling on or flipping through a book or doing an unboxing. So thank you kindly for taking part in chat. But of course, I know a lot of folks out there, they don't have an opportunity to watch live. Doesn't matter if you're watching live or on Memorex. Thank you very kindly for taking time out to watch any of the over 2,100 videos here on the channel. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I will be back on Tuesday. Once again, we'll be diving on into the old Margrave. So enjoy the rest of your morning, afternoon, evening, whatever time of day it is. Don't forget, like the video if you liked the video. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And if you do subscribe, ring that bell. It'll not only let you know when the Dispatch streams live Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday evenings right here on YouTube. It'll also let you know when I share other videos, such as my aforementioned review of the Dark Tower slipcase set. Thank you for watching. Once again, I'm Jeff McAleer. And as I always like to close, I certainly hope all of you get to enjoy plenty of great gaming with your game.